Good afternoon and welcome to the Championship Weekly podcast, a weekly podcast looking at absolutely everything that is happening in the Championship. Before we came on air, my microphone did kind of malfunction a little bit, so hopefully we don't have any technical issues, but you know what to expect from this podcast, don't you? And today what we are going to do is we are going to be reviewing the transfer window from the Championship. But before that, obviously, we have the news. We won't be talking about the last match day today. I have the scores at the very bottom of the screen. First of all, Rhys, how are you? And any games that you quickly, in about 2 minutes, want to cover from last weekend?
I'm very well, mate. I'm very well. First things first, I don't normally put a background on behind me, but if you know us, of course, we'll talk about it later on, of course we will, but I had to. When I was walking through town doing the work the other day, I just had to get that behind me. In terms of the last game week, yeah, I think you look at there was two sort of free kick specialists, weren't there, in the Oxford Coventry game. You look at Iran Kunda, scored another free kick. I think it's his second free kick goal of the season now. Ryan Manning, I think, was the other one, another free kick goal for him as well. You look at QPR against Charlton at home, that was a really good game, wasn't it? QPR edging that one 3-1. And then you and then you look at Ipswich, don't you? And it's another weekend where we shoot ourselves in the foot. We let ourselves down. We're not performing anywhere near the levels that we need to be. Norwich, I've got to mention them as well. Solid away performance at Blackburn without blowing them away, I'd suggest, but it's a solid away performance. Clean sheet on the road. They've got to be happy with that. Portsmouth are continuing their trajectory. I had them down. I think I said it in the first episode that we recorded for this channel that I think they're going to be a sort of mid-table side this season. But with the signings they've made, are they dark horses for top six?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. And I want to talk about the bottom three as well. I know it's too early to really talk about relegation and things like this, but you mentioned Ipswich. I assume Ipswich won't be down there, fingers crossed, come the end of the season. Who do you reckon are the teams that should be worried? And we can look at this from a different perspective now that the transfer window has closed.
Yeah, I think the first one is pretty obvious. I think Sheffield Wednesday are going to be down there, aren't they? I do like what I've seen from them so far, though. I do like that sort of team spirit that they've had. There were sort of late links in the day, weren't there, for Pierce Charles, but I believe he has stayed at the club. I don't think he has gone. So that's a huge boost for Sheffield Wednesday. Sheffield United, the other side of the city. Look, it's a weird time, isn't it, for Ruben Sayers? Fan suggestion that he should be sacked. I think it's ludicrous. I think it's absolutely wrong on all levels. There was a bit of an altercation, weren't there, at the end of the game? Can't remember who it was against. Someone's going to put it in the chat in a second, I'm sure. There was an altercation between Ruben Sayers and a fan, and it looked like some things were shouted back and forth. But for me, it's too early to be talking about this job. I do expect Sheffield United to be way up the other end of the table by the time, really by New Year's. I think once they get clicking, they'll be absolutely fine. Oxford United are a team I am still worried about. I still do have those concerns about the top end of the pitch in the final third for Oxford. Derby, the other team who are sort of lingering. I think once John Eustace gets his philosophies across a little bit more, start getting best out with the likes of Caden Jackson, then perhaps they'll start to push up. Ourselves, I mean, it's mad that we're having a discussion about the bottom half of the league and we're talking about Ipswich. I think it's mad to be suggesting that, and we sort of talked about it, didn't we, just before we came live. And you look at player turnover, perhaps was it a bit too much? In our case, I'd argue that it was, but I wouldn't be surprised if Blackburn, they're the last team I mentioned, I wouldn't be surprised if Blackburn are still down there come the end of the season. I think their summer business has just been all over the place.
I agree. And let's get cracking into the news. And to start off with today, we are once again going to be talking about Sheffield Wednesday and how absolutely abysmal they have been. So before we do that, let's talk about a couple of positives that have happened recently for Sheffield Wednesday. They won a penalty shootout in the EFL Cup against Leeds United with a very young squad. Their young players are stepping up. Their players have finally been paid on time. But the negatives are fairly obvious. Chanzeri has rejected 40 million to 30 million pounds worth of bids for the club over the summer. He wants over 100 million, which is more than 2.5 times what he paid for the club back in 2015. And Chanzeri this year has seen over 200 million pounds worth of loss. So look, there have been plenty of fan protests. Rhys, just 708,000 fans attended their game against Leeds United, and that is even with tickets being 15 quid. That's not much more that we can say, but why isn't the club being sold yet? What is going on?
I think it all comes down to sort of one factor, doesn't it? And it comes down to Chanzeri's valuation of the club simply being too high. I don't think you're going to find an ownership group that are happy and are willing to pay close to £100 million for Wednesday at this moment of time. I think there's only a handful of clubs, if that, within this division that's worth anywhere near £100 million. And Sheffield Wednesday definitely aren't one of those at this moment in time. You know, they did progress in the EFL Cup. They've got Grimsby at home, and there is talk on Twitter this afternoon, especially, that's really ramped up. There's going to be another protests at the Grimsby game because the club are only opening up the south stand, and tickets again are I think around £10 to £15, I think. But you look underneath it, and I think it's the 1867 group, I think. Don't quote me on that if I've misquoted you. I hold my hands up, but it was some fan group from Sheffield Wednesday who put a tweet out saying, "Don't buy tickets, don't put money into Chanzeri's pocket. It's only," in quotation marks, "it's only Grimsby Town at home. It's not the end of the world. It's not a huge game." But you still got fans underneath that thread saying they want to go support the club, and it's almost sad, isn't it? It's almost at that stage now where I can understand why fans want to go and support the club. The players deserve the back, and it's not the players' fault. They shouldn't be playing in front of, or in a ground that's only half full or quarter full. But at the end of the day, the only way you're going to hurt an owner like Chanzeri is to stop putting money into his back pocket.
Exactly, and again, we both hope that something positive will come out of that soon. Let's talk about Wrexham because they are among European elites when it comes to spending. So Wrexham have spent £13 million this summer, and that is potentially rising with add-ons. With limited outgoings, their net spend, Rhys, is one of the highest in Europe. So look, Wrexham haven't had a brilliant start to the season, but they're clearly showing ambition. What do you make of the fact that they are up there with the likes of AC Milan when it comes to spending over the summer? In fact, they have a higher net spend than AC Milan.
Yeah, they're certainly going for it, aren't they? I think that's the one thing that you can give to Wrexham. But you look at signings that are made throughout this summer, and really these are players that should be at a minimum mid-table championship. I know there's question marks over Danny Ward, bringing him in goal. Can he adapt, to a sort of more intense, more sort of where the style of play has changed within the division? Connor Cody's another one. Is he a bit too old school at the back? But again, he's one that's definitely got that potential to be able to adjust. But the standout signing for me, and it might surprise you considering that me and you are both Ipswich fans, but the standout signing for me at Wrexham was actually Callum Doyle, coming in a very versatile defender. Spent last season on loan at Norwich from Manchester City. He's come in to Wrexham. He's going to add a lot of quality, versatility. He plays football the right way. Callum Doyle. So actually, he's the standout when you look at Wrexham in this summer.
Sorry, Ballum, we can't even look at that comment without laughing. Thank you very much for joining us here this afternoon. So, straight face on Callum Doyle is an absolutely brilliant signing, in my opinion, for them. They've also signed the likes of Lewis O'Brien, who I think is an incredibly underrated signing. I haven't actually got him on my list of top championship signings, but maybe I should have done. They have Nathan Broadhead, Kiefer Moore as well, Ryan Hardy, who did an absolutely brilliant job for Plymouth when they got relegated. And obviously, that was despite the circumstances. 7 of their 13 signings are international players. And again, if we're talking about the Premier League, they have outspent the likes of Bournemouth, Brighton, Brentford, Crystal Palace, Chelsea, Wolves, Aston Villa, and Fulham, which again is absolutely insane. Do you reckon that puts pressure on them, though, to definitely get promoted or to definitely at least be up there in the playoffs?
I think when talking about Wrexham, I think it's tough, isn't it? Because they've kept that tag over them of being the club that buys their way through the divisions. But I don't think you can do that within the Championship. Look, they've made great signs over the pitch. You can look at Nathan Broadhead coming in as a versatile attacker. We were just talking about Callum Doyle, Connor Cody, Josh Windass, Ryan Hardy. These are solid Championship players. Wrexham have made no secret, have they, over the fact that they want to get up to the Premier League. They were talking. Sorry if you heard that. That's the choice of living where I live. Jesus. Where was I? Yes, you sort of bring these players in who are sort of mid-table sort of Championship players. A couple of them could perhaps push into sort of a top 6 team. But really, with Wrexham making no secret of the fact that they want to become Premier League, they were making that very clear from day one, weren't they? They weren't messing about. Even within their sort of League 2 National League days, they were talking about getting up to the top flight. I'm just not sure if these players can match that ambition.
And Bellum says Wrexham should be top 6 at least. They have signed plenty of players. So, yeah, that is where Wrexham are, and they're doing very, very well at the moment. Let's talk about, just to kind of like transition into the transfer aspect of the show. Am I being harsh, Rhys, in saying that Blackburn Rovers' 2025 summer transfer window has raised more questions than answers? Am I being harsh, or is that a valid point to make?
No, I think you're absolutely bang on. And after this window, I'm a lot more worried about Blackburn Rovers than what it was before ball was kicked this season. You even look at Championship appearances, they've lost players combined or accumulated that made over 1,800 Championship appearances between them. Yet only 2 of the 10 arrivals they've brought in have actually played at this level before. That by itself is extremely worrying. You even look at some great players they brought through the academy, the likes of Joe Raskin, Costello, Harry Leonard, John Buckley. These are players that, don't get me wrong, they're not going to be world beaters. They're certainly not at that level yet, but they're solid Championship players, I believe, anyway. So the fact they've been sort of told to go, they've been told they're surplus to requirements, it's worrying, isn't it? You even look at certain positions, and the position that stands out to me when we talk about Blackburn Rovers is in goal. You look at Ainsley Pears, he didn't get his move, did he? So he's still at the club. So does that mean he's back into the first team picture? Because if he's not, the only other backup goalkeeper that they've got is Balach Toff, and he's in the academy. So, there is no squad depth within Blackburn Rovers.
Yeah, and I agree. And look, they've lost some really big players, in my opinion, as well. Lewis Travis, who has gone to Derby County. He was their captain, obviously. Dom Hyam, who was their first choice centre-back, who had played 50 consecutive Championship games for them. He has left for Wrexham. And I think the biggest one, in my opinion anyway, is Callum Britton, who has left after 113 appearances. He has signed for Middlesbrough. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of fans are very concerned. Look, we had a guest on in the past. I'm awful at names, so I've completely forgotten his name, but he will be back on the show soon. So many apologies if you are listening to this. But I remember last year when we did the Football League Weekly, he was talking about his concerns and how absolutely abysmal the likes of Rudy Gestede in the boardroom have been. So finally, before we do move on, and I'm simply asking you this because I want to give the guy a shout out. Blackburn fans, have they got reasons for concern?
100%, of course they have. You even look at the sort of organisation that came around this summer transfer window. The fact we had to, I say we as Championship fans, had to wait until 11 o'clock in the evening before the announcement was made about Dom Hyam going to Wrexham. So obviously that signing would have been made early evening time, and the fact that we had to wait until almost midnight before that became official, I think that really sort of speaks volumes for how the club's been run behind the scenes as well. You sort of mention, these big players that have left. All that's going to do is create even more tension on a very frail relationship that already exists between the board and the fans, and that's only going one way. So that's only getting worse. Do you reckon? And a question for the chat as well. Do you reckon that Valérien Ismaël, in charge of Blackburn, has bought himself a little bit of time because of the way he acts in press conferences? He's become a little bit popular, hasn't he, through how he presents himself?
Yeah, and I think he's a good manager. I genuinely do. I know he didn't do too well at Besiktas. I know he didn't do well at a couple of clubs he was at before, but I genuinely reckon that he's better than anybody at the moment, given how much money they are kind of like spending on manager and players at the moment. He's probably better than anything they could get in. Ballum says Football League Monthly, Championship Podcast Monthly. Yeah, but we are now the Championship Weekly. And saying that, a quick shout out to when we were busy last week. We had an exclusive interview with Lee Norfolk on the show. The first, and I think only besides Rory Fallon, New Zealander, to play for Ipswich. So go and give that a listen. Birmingham City have a reserve goalkeeper called Birmingham. Everton also have a reserve goalkeeper called Pickford, which I find quite funny. Let's transition, though, into our top 5 transfer signings. So obviously the transfer window has now slammed shut. It was an absolutely hectic day yesterday, and I'm sure we'll talk about Ipswich's window in more detail, maybe later on or next week. But how this is going to work, Rhys is going to give us his 3 or 5 top transfers from across the summer, and then I will do the same after that. And obviously we might have a couple of signings that are both the same, so if that is the case, and I won't talk about my top signings in too much detail. But Rhys, the floor is yours. Start from anywhere in the list. Let's start at number 5. Who do you have on number 5 in regards to your top signings?
You know what? It's incredibly difficult, and these 3 you could place them in any order that you like. I've not actually got them in any order or any particular order because each of them is in the top 3 for a completely different reason. So first of all, it's no surprise who the first one is. Has to be Marcelino Nunez from Norwich to Ipswich. Not necessarily because of the player that he's coming in and what he can do, more because of the drama that he's created, because he's crossed the border from Norfolk into Suffolk, the drama and the sort of headlines that have come out of that. So that's why he's in my top 3. I've then gone for an outside pick that I will be shocked if anyone else who is a Championship pundit or a Championship fan has actually gone for. In terms of what could amount from this, I've put Brandon Williams to Hull City within my top 3 because of the journey, the recovery and the rehab that he's been on. Let's not forget how incredible of a fullback he actually is. He's very versatile. He can play left back. He can play right back. He is a very, very solid addition if he can get over those sort of personal issues that he does have. So this is a huge season, I think, for Brandon Williams. And then my third one, but like I say, these aren't in any order, really. Then my third one, I've gone Sorba Thomas to Stoke. I think it's been a fantastic sign on that wing for Stoke. You look at last season, he had 13 goal contributions. He's already hit 5 of them already, and we're only 4 games into the season. So he's only got to do that twice, and he's hit his record from last season. I think he's very creative. He started every league game so far for Stoke. He's good on the wing. He puts good balls in. He's a very exciting winger. So those are my top 3, but for completely different reasons.
And it's interesting because you didn't pick anybody that I picked, which makes for a very interesting conversation. Let's talk about Marcelino Nunez there. And I'm very conscious about us being incredibly biased towards the club that we both support, which is Ipswich Town. But looking at it from a business point of view, a player, I think in the last year of his contract, I might be wrong, £10 million is a lot of money for the Championship. But do you take the viewpoint that I have, that if you can afford to sign these players and spend this money, then go ahead and spend this money? So what do you think?
Yes, I'll take this purely from a neutral point of view. I think it's a tough one, isn't it? Obviously, he wasn't happy at Norwich. He had rejected the opportunity to sign 2 or 3 contracts within the last sort of time period. He decided not to sign any of those. So his heart was very much set on a move away from Carrow Road, wasn't it? So if you look at it purely from a business point of view, to get £7.5 million up front or guaranteed, however this deal works, it's incredible business sense. You know, they're going to lose him on a free next year. So if you look at it from that point of view, it's fantastic sense. He has been labelled a lot with this sort of injury-prone tag, which is something that I personally don't buy into, because you look at the last 3 seasons, he's hit at least 32 appearances in each of the last 3 seasons, so he's had a decent amount of game time. I wouldn't say that he's an injury-prone player. What I would say, what he will bring to Ipswich, I think he brings that sort of that attacking prowess from central midfield. He's very creative. He will get on the ball. He'll make things happen, which is probably something that we've been missing within the opening sort of few games. But from a Norwich point of view, like I say, it's made headlines because of who he's gone to, hasn't it? Because it's Ipswich. If you went to anyone else for that sort of money, no one would really bat an eyelid. So if you look at it from Norwich point of view, it's fantastic business sense. But from Ipswich, it's a little bit like we've had our pants pulled down a little bit in the fact that £10 million with add-ons for a player who's only got a year left on his deal doesn't seem that we've got value for money on that one. You're on mute, mate.
I'm back. That is amazing. Here's a very surprising statistic for those that have been following us for quite a while, that this is the first time on the Championship Weekly that I ever put myself on mute. So, do you reckon, because talking about mute, I think a lot of Norwich fans wanted to put their phones on mute, because did you see the absolute meltdown that they had on social media? And there have been moments where Ipswich Town fans have melted down. They melted down when Connor Chaplin got sold to Coventry, to Portsmouth, and when Luke Wolfenden got sold to Coventry. So, what do you make of their reaction on social media?
Yeah, I think it's a very fair reaction, to be perfectly honest with you. And I can see why Norwich fans are very up in arms. He's the first player, I believe, in 24 years to make the crossing from Norwich to Ipswich. Obviously, players in the past have gone from Ipswich to Norwich, but this is the first time in 24 years that a player's gone from Norfolk into Suffolk. So I can totally see why fans are up in arms, and they're perfectly within their rights to be as well. He's a player that you can look back months on some tweets. Chris Reeve, who's a Norwich City podcaster, his head totally went, didn't it? He ended up deleting a load of tweets that he put out previously about Nunez, about building a statue, and he was really singing his praises. They've now all suddenly disappeared from social media. So I think if Norwich fans, I know it's a difficult sort of proposition to do, if you can take out this summer window, I think there is a very, very good Championship player within Nunez. it's just feeling very salted because of where he's gone to.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I think Norwich fans are absolutely allowed to have that opinion. And I'm just about to show a video, and I'll ask for your opinion on the video once it is uploaded. But whilst I load it up, he has got an injury record. Is that something we should be, and I know we just briefly touched upon it, but is that something we should be concerned about?
Not for me particularly. I think it's very easy now for players to be hit with this sort of injury-prone status. You look at the last 3 seasons. You look at 22-23, he played 37 out of 46. You look at 23-24, he played 38 of 46. You look at last season, he played 32 out of 46. So he does play the majority of games. And I think midfield is a position where you are naturally going to pick up more injuries, aren't you? You do the most miles. I expect in central midfield you're covering a lot more ground than other positions. So I think it's natural for central midfielders to pick up these sort of more niggly injuries. I'd say he's been lucky so far in the fact that he hasn't had a sort of big injury defining moment. He has been sort of little niggles here and there. But if you can keep Nunez fit, keep him firing, probably goes down as one of the best midfielders in the Championship at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. And I want your opinion on this video. I might play the entire thing. I highly doubt, given who it is, that we're going to get copyright strikes. I'll be incredibly surprised if we did. But I want, including everybody else in the chat, I want you to give us your thoughts on this video.
Switch. But I told him, when you would ever consider a move there, what would happen? I explained him everything. He knew about it. But I said as well to him, if I get a chance again playing against you, I will fucking break you. That's what I say to him. He knew exactly what would happen if we would have had any thoughts about it. The scenario around him, all the fans that, because he was such a loved guy here at Norwich City. But I also told him that I don't believe that Norwich City would never ever consider to sell him to that club. I say to him, look, there's probably other clubs that showed interest and would offer that amount of money and stuff like that. I say to him back then.
Now, Rhys, I'm not being a dick here, but I get so much pleasure from that video. Absolute head loss from a YouTuber / TikTok influencer who tried his hand at being a professional footballer. What do you think?
One question. Who does he play for now?
No, well, Sheffield Wednesday. He was on trial there, but I don't think they signed him.
He's a free agent, mate. He doesn't even play football for a club anymore, yet he's out here trying to give it really big bollocks. It's inject it, mate. I love it. I could watch that over and over and over again. He talks about if I get to play you, mate, you won't be playing League One football, let alone Championship. You've been found out. You're not the player you think you are. If you were anywhere near that sort of player that in your own mindset you are, Norwich would have snapped you up easily by now. There's a reason why they haven't, and there's a reason why other Championship clubs haven't come for you either. And I think I've probably just written off Onel Hernandez appearing on the show.
I'm going to look at it from a slightly different perspective. Imagine if, say, Luke Chambers came out and he threatened, I'm trying to make a good analogy here, but he threatened George Hurst for joining Norwich. Would you be embarrassed as an Ipswich supporter if he said exactly what Onel Hernandez said? Or would you kind of be like, yes, he's standing up for our club, he's truly blue, he bleeds blue. Are we perhaps being a little bit hypocritical?
I think it's a tough one, because if Chambers come out and said along the words of it, I'll be more supportive of it, because of the fact that Chambers was who he was. He was our club captain. He was our inspiration. He's played with broken foot. He played with a broken rib. cut the guy open, he bleeds blue and white. I often see him. I'm not going to reveal where I work on a live stream for obvious reasons, but I often see him out and about. He's always up for a chat. He always talks about Ipswich. He is such a good guy. Whereas Onel Hernandez is a failed striker at championship level who has no real affiliation to Norwich City, does he? Look, I think it's a tough one. I think if it's your club captain or someone you define as a legend, then I'm more supportive of it. If it's someone who's had a little spell at your club, has lost his head because he hasn't got a deal, and now thinks he's going to win fans over by Slayton Nunez, it's just not going to happen. Perhaps he should stick to TikTok.
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. And you also mentioned Sorbra Thomas as well. He was actually quite a good player out in Nantes in France. That is how you pronounce it, by the way. I'm not saying that word. How exciting a player could he potentially be?
Yeah, he was a player that when he signed for Stoke, I was very, what's the word? I wasn't expecting him to sort of have this effect sort of straight away. I knew it'd be a danger down that right-hand side. He can operate down the left-hand side as well. I knew it'd be a danger for Stoke. I didn't envision him having this sort of big impact straight away. He's already hitting goals and assists. He's become a real integral part of what Stoke are trying to do at the moment. And you can look over really, can't you? You can look at Stoke as a whole, and if you take that theme away from Stoke being the championship underperformers, there's a very good shout there to they could actually go on to do something this season. But it relies on them being able to keep the likes of Sorbra Thomas fit.
So I'm going to go on to my top championship players now, and feel free to interrupt me or interject if you want to give me your thoughts on it. I have gone for, and I've actually gone for 5. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm going to go for, as one of my picks, Ben Sheaf. From Coventry to Wrexham. He made 177 appearances for Coventry, 161 of them being in the Championship. 9 goals and 11 assists for Coventry, which as a defensive midfielder, I don't think is bad at all. If we look at his statistics from a couple of seasons ago, but I still think it is absolutely pertinent. 2.1 tackles and 1.8 interceptions per game, with an 85% pass completion rate. And he was sold for 6.5 million, which in my opinion is a decent return for Coventry City. He was absolutely integral for Coventry during their FA Cup semi-final game against Man United, the game that they should, in my opinion, have won. He is a reliable tempo setter. He could be absolutely brilliant pinging in passes to feed Broadhead and Windass. He's a brilliant leader as well. I don't know whether I've sold him to you or not, Rhys, but he could potentially be a handy little signing, couldn't he?
Yeah, I think he's more than just being able to be a handy little signing. I think he's going to be integral to what Wrexham do. Let's not forget as well that while he was at Coventry, that partnership that he was able to build up in that sort of midfield sort of position with Jack Rudoni was what Coventry City became reliant on for quite a while, during periods as well. So I was very surprised to see that they actually would happily let him go to Wrexham. I wonder how much of that perhaps came from the player point of view and perhaps the player trying to push that signing over the line. Because like I say, I think he's a defensive midfielder who's got every attribute that you could look for. I think he's box to box. I think he's a playmaker. I think he dictates play. I think he can start attacks. He's got a defensive quality about him as well. He's a midfielder that's got a bit of everything.
I agree. And I think, especially for Wrexham, I know he was a lot of money, but he could be absolutely brilliant for them. Now, this is something we can have a little bit of a downhearted debate on. Connor Chaplin from Ipswich to Portsmouth on a loan. I know I said a transfer earlier on, but on a loan in the 23-24 season, the season we got promoted. I had the shirt. I did have the shirt before I moved it from my wall right behind me. He made 13 goals and 9 assists the season we got promoted. In League One, the season we got promoted from League One into the Championship. My camera has just gone off again, which is absolutely lovely. I'll get it back on in a minute, but I'll carry on so I don't interrupt myself. The season we got promoted from League One to the Championship, 26 goals and 4 assists, 174 Ipswich appearances, 55 goals, 26 appearances. He is well proven at this level. It's going to be a very emotional homecoming for him. Rhys, I'm back. I was absolutely gutted that we let go of him. So let's have a little bit of a therapy session here. Why did we let him go? We being Ipswich.
I think it's an absolute joke. I absolutely do. I think it's an absolute joke. I don't see what on earth we're doing here. First of all, the positives before we get into the deep stuff that's going to make us both cry. Portsmouth have got themselves they know him, don't they? He's gone back to the club that he knows and he loves a little bit more than ourselves. He's an attacking midfielder. He's got a little bit of everything, hasn't he? He dictates play. I think we all as Championship fans will remember this. If we can cast our minds back a couple of years ago to that Wes Burns Trevella goal at home at Portman Road against Fleetwood Town, that all came from a Connor Chaplin pass. That often gets forgotten, but that switch of play over to Leif Davis is what creates that space for Wes Burns to cut in at the other end or the other side of the pitch, and that creates a chance for Burns. So as much as the finish is talked about, Connor Chaplin has a huge role to play in that goal, and if he doesn't make that pass, that goal doesn't happen. But they've got him as an attack midfielder who he does absolutely everything. He even can score headers, which he must be 5'3", 5'4", and the fact he's scoring headers, he's just got a bit of everything about him. In these sort of cameos he's had this season, he looks a cut above everything else that we've got. He looks a cut above Shimodix. He looks a cut above Akpom when he's had his sort of little cameos at times. What I don't get is something that Chappers did say in his sort of welcome interview at Portsmouth. He mentioned that this was something that he had thought about for a while and was on his mind for quite a while. With that being the case, why did McKenna start him on Saturday against Derby?
I don't know, and there are plenty of things that, Ipswich fans can question, especially given how Connor Chaplin, for a while, I don't think he's necessarily been in the right headspace, and you can kind of tell that by the way he carries himself on the football pitch. He's still a live wire who carries himself well in regards to the efforts that he puts on, but his body language hasn't been great, and he hasn't really been showing us levels that, like he kind of put in. Even in the Premier League last season, he made a couple of brilliant appearances last season, in my opinion. So, look, I'm absolutely gutted as he's a versatile player. He can play on the wing as well. And Egli, however you say his name, the new Norwegian player that we've signed, we don't know how good he is yet. He could, I know he was brilliant in the league that he was playing in the Danish league, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to perform well in the Championship. So yes, I am incredibly worried, and fingers crossed he does come back, a bit like Clark did when he went on loan to Sheffield United. Now, I have the choice between a couple of players who I could potentially decide for the next one. But I am going to go for a player who will probably give us the most to talk about, Alfie Doherty from Luton to Millwall. Let's talk about the last time he was in the Championship, which was last season during the relegation season with Luton. He had 95 successful crosses. He was quite good, actually. He only made 7 assists, though, with 2 goals. All in all, he had a decent season last year, despite everything that's happened. He had a couple of brilliant appearances in the Premier League as well, including his 2 assists against Arsenal and an assist against Chelsea. He is brilliant at creating chances. He is incredibly versatile. He can play as a left back, and on the left wing as well. And I think Alex Neil loves those kind of players. He is almost homegrown for Millwall as well. He's a Southeast Londoner and a Millwall fan as well. But if I am to play devil's advocate, Rhys, he is fairly injury prone. He had hamstring issues last season, but he hasn't really had any injuries to be concerned about so far this season. So when I think of Alfie Doherty, I think of the player that was almost once linked to a call-up for England. We thought he was going to do something a little bit bigger a couple of seasons ago. Talk me through Alfie Doherty. Like he has a lot, in my opinion, to prove. He has a lot of people to prove wrong as well.
Yeah, I think when I think of him, I think he's everything that this new sort of genre of manager or head coach want to see in a left-sided player. I think whether he's at left back, whether he's at left midfield, whether he's at left wing back, which he has started a few times, you get the same work rate from him. He's up and down that pitch. He's a great defender, but he's got that eye for goal, hasn't he? He's got the eye for an assist. He's got the eye to dictate play. He's got the eye to set someone up to make that pass, to get that killer instinct. No matter if it's in the Premier League, the Championship, every cup competition, look through his stats. He gets goals, he gets assists. The only thing I'd say he has to prove is perhaps something to himself. Can he stay clear of these injuries? Can he get over these hamstring issues? Can he get over these little niggly injuries that just keep biting back? Controversial, actually, no, it's not controversial at all. If injuries weren't a factor towards him, with no disrespect to Millwall, I think Alfie Doherty will be playing quite comfortably in the Premier League. You know, I really rate him that highly. I think the only thing sort of holding him back is that injury record. But you look at Millwall as a whole, I think they've had a really good transfer window, haven't they? You know, look at Alfie Doherty, look at Massimo Luongo in central midfield. They've recruited very wisely.
And let's look at some of the players who are still to be signed. These are currently the free agents that are out there at the moment. I think most of it is up to date. There's Patrick Bamford, Emmanuel Dennis, Dele Alli, who has been linked to a move to Birmingham, Josh Brownhill, who has been linked to a move to Sheffield United and Ipswich, even Leicester City. Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, Liam Cooper, we all remember him from Leeds United. Craig Dawson is still an absolutely brilliant centre-back, in my opinion, after getting released by Wolverhampton Wanderers. Courtney Horse, who I completely forgot about. I forgot that he was still at Aston Villa before getting released. And Jamal Lewis, as well as Tom Glover, who isn't necessarily the glamorous name that we all necessarily want playing for our club, but he was a fairly decent player, in my opinion, despite his limited appearances at Middlesbrough. Are there any names there that, and we can talk about our perspective as Ipswich fans, that you would potentially sign, or that if you were a lower end Championship club, that you would potentially risk signing?
For me, there's two very glowing standout players within that sort of 11. And the two sort of standouts are Dele Alli and Josh Brownhill. Those two in midfield, how they haven't picked up clubs is simply astounding to me. I think there's something, isn't there, within Josh Brownhill? He's been offered a few deals. He was offered a contract at Leicester and at Wolves, according to reports. And apparently he's turned them down. So we're not sure really what he's holding out on. There are sort of rumours going around that he's holding out for a move to Saudi for the money. So potentially that's where Brownhill's going, which would be a huge shame because, as we all know, the standard of football over there isn't comparable to the Championship. But I think Josh Brownhill walks into any Championship team, I'd definitely have him in a heartbeat at Ipswich. And then you get Dele Alli, who controversially I'm a huge fan of. I think again, if you can get Dele Alli back to what we know he can be and what he should be, he's a player that could easily do it, I think, at a lower end Premier League club. You know, I think I'd sort of rate him that highly. So at a minimum, Dele Alli should be looking at clubs like Birmingham, Sheffield United. I put him into that bracket. I would say ourselves, but we've just hit that 25 squad limit now, and I think it'd count towards that. So we'd have to lose someone else or deregister someone. So I don't think it'd come to us now, despite I know you could deregister Harry Clark or Wes Burns because of long-term injury. Perhaps that's the way you go with it, to bring in someone like Dele Alli. But our midfield is obviously pretty stacked at the moment, and you have to keep one eye on the squad man limit. But I'd be very surprised if those two are free agents past the end of the year, because they really should be at a minimum championship players.
I agree, and we have absolutely sped through this show. I normally say that because we normally go on for like an hour and 15 minutes or an hour and a half. We are only 45 minutes in, so if you have any questions, then don't forget to put them in the comments. Let's go through some of the questions here. Does Rhys think Connor Wickham should go to Norwich City or Ipswich Town? And have I heard of Connor Wickham? Did you see that goal, by the way, that he scored for the free agent starting 11? And by the way, they have the likes of Tyrese John Jules playing for them, which he's still young. Why is he playing for the free agent starting 11? So did you see that goal, first of all, that he scored?
I'm pretty sure that Man United keeper, under-21's keeper, is getting his contract ripped up. I think he'll be playing for free agents after that. That is really poor goalkeeping, isn't it? I don't know what on earth he's trying to do. Don't get me wrong, it's a really, really good strike. It's a really good finish. But the angle of it isn't great. And it looks like it just goes through the keeper, doesn't it?
And he scored the exact same goal for, I think, Forest Green Rovers in the FA Cup a couple of seasons ago against, I think it was, I don't know who it was against, Bournemouth maybe, I don't know, but like he is known for scoring that kind of goal. Would I want him though? I liked him when he played for us last time. I know he's an Ipswich boy, or he came through the club at a very young age. Anyway, I think he actually came from the Reading Youth Academy before signing for our youth academy. But look, he's 32, injury prone. I remember when he left Forest Green Rovers, he thought he would get one last big payday, one last really good move, because he did really well at Forest Green Rovers. But, you know, deciding to leave that club after he was given a new or offered a new contract was a massive mistake for him to make, in my opinion, because he hasn't really done much since. Just going to quickly read through some of the comments a minute. Many apologies for the dead air. Why do you think Barry Bannon is seen as a Sheffield Wednesday poster boy? Barry Bannon, like, he is such a loyal player, and you know, like, my screen is frozen again because my webcam is absolutely doing my head in. I'll try and get that fixed for next week. But yeah, let's talk about Barry Bannon. He went on TalkSport. He spoke glowingly of the club despite what they are going through. He's a bit of a poster boy, isn't he, for Sheffield Wednesday?
Yeah, he is. And it'd be so easy for someone in his position to walk away from the club. You know, to be there for a decade and a half, around 15 years. He's shown exactly what captain material should be. He could have got a move realistically to most championship clubs, couldn't he? He could have got a move and no one would have blamed him. No one would have batted an eyelid. We wouldn't be on here slating him. We wouldn't be on here cursing him or saying he's done the wrong thing. So he deserves huge credit for actually sticking at Sheffield Wednesday. And if there is a player that, or if there is one player that deserves to see Sheffield Wednesday at the other end of this, then it's definitely Barry Bannon. What we have to mention is, of course, that I wouldn't be surprised to see him go to Turkey in the next couple of years.
Oh God, his hair is absolutely horrific. I'm going to ask you one other question whilst I quickly sort out my webcam. This is a brand new laptop, so God knows what is going on.
So I think he's just gone to reconnect. So Ballum's asked, are we going to a match, Reading or Wimbledon together? So we're not going to a Reading or Wimbledon match, but in January, Ballum, as you rightfully mentioned earlier on, or in your most recent comment, I do follow Tamworth semi sort of, what's the word? They're my second team. You know, we all know that I'm an Ipswich fan by heart, but Tamworth do have a special place. I'm going up the next 2 Saturdays to watch them at home against Eastleigh, and then the following Saturday away at Sutton. So I'll be at those 2 games, which I'm very, very excited for. And in January, Tamworth are actually away at Truro, which isn't too far, without trying to give locations out of where me and Ben are based. Truro isn't too far from where Ben is. So in January, we have planned a trip. I'll be going down. Me and Scott, if Scott's in the chat, if you're watching, mate, me and Scott are going down towards Truro to watch Tamworth away there. So that will be the game that we watch together. I do know Ben is trying to get up this end of the world to watch an Ipswich game at some point. Hopefully that will happen this side of Christmas. But it is tough, isn't it? We all know the sort of the financial restrictions that can happen with it. It's tough, isn't it? You sort of look at the price of going to football now. It's tight, isn't it? It's certainly not easy. We talk about so just so you guys have a message from Ben. Basically, StreamYard is not being compatible with him this evening. So you might just have me for the rest of the show. That might happen, but hopefully we'll get Ben back at some point. Yeah, Southampton v Portsmouth. It's coming up, isn't it? It's coming up. I think it's within the next sort of couple of weeks or so. I think it certainly isn't far away now, Southampton Portsmouth. And it's one really that has it has Connor Chaplin written all over it, doesn't it? It sort of weighs back into the conversation that we were having earlier on about Chaplin, and he's pretty much destined to score, isn't he? I think you look back to that night at Portman Road in April 2024, and when Sarmiento scores the last minute or the last second real sort of winner in that one, you had the scenes of Chaplin running from one end of the pitch right to the other to sort of celebrate, and that's exactly what Chaplin offers. He offers that sort of loyalty. He offers that sort of extra little pizzazz, doesn't he? For Portsmouth, he comes in with that sort of knowledge of how the club was before, of course. So it certainly gets a little bit spicy, and there's certainly undertones to Southampton Portsmouth as well. And I think Ben may have just joined us again. But in terms of what games we're doing, definitely Truro, Adam, definitely Truro Tamworth, and I think Ben's back.
So I can't take this podcast seriously, given how I'm literally on my phone. So I'll give you a sneak preview of my setup. So this is a new laptop, by the way. You probably saw all the shirts on my wall and how filthy this room is. But yeah, I'm afraid I'm talking to you via my phone. I'm a guest, I guess. So what have I missed?
So we were just talking about Southampton Portsmouth, the undertone with Connor Chaplin making the move back down south, and we were talking about the Tamworth Truro game as well. That looks to be the one that we'll be going to together.
Yes, and I've already booked my hotel room for that. I'm looking forward to that. Should be a very good, should be a good experience, really, because I'm not a Truro fan, so I haven't got any affiliations for them anyway. So should be incredibly exciting. So with that being said, I think that is it for this week's Championship Weekly. I'm going to try and get my StreamYard sorted because it's just absolutely pooped out of my computer. So I will quickly do the plugs as well as I can. And Rhys, if you wouldn't mind clicking the offline button at the very top of the StreamYard thingy. I'm bad at explaining instructions, but you can find us on Twitter at Championship Podcast. Where can people find you on Twitter, Rhys? And anywhere.
So people might notice that I've been laughing for the last couple of seconds. What you guys can't see is that at the bottom, we can see our images of how we look on screen, but very zoomed in. And at the moment, I can see myself and I can just see Ben's eyes, nose, and just like his top lip. And that's all I can see from... and that's really sort of got me. We'll have to find a way of showing people that's brilliant. It's like the camera's here. And that's all I can see at the bottom of my screen. But you can find me on Twitter at RhysCurtis14.
And we will be back next week, maybe with a guest, maybe not with a guest. You can also find us on YouTube. Simply type in the Championship Weekly podcast, and we are now obviously the first thing that comes up when you go on there. We're also on Facebook, Championship Weekly podcast as well. But until then, Rhys, can you do the honours of ending the show?